Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today, being the Upasata day, is the occasion for aligning oneself to the field of Dhamma. The field of Dhamma means the whole cultivations, enlightenment factors, ways of behaviour, community, both on the kind of obvious level, just other people we feel affiliated with in terms of spiritual practice. Also those who've helped us and guided us in the past, or those we look to as exemplars and models, actually bringing those into mind, so we're held within that particular context. And then also within that we begin to perhaps recognise qualities that arise from that field, a sense of this is honesty, this is reliability, these are people you can trust, this is noble behaviour, this is relinquishment, this is steadfastness, this is clarity, it's qualities that people manifest, and so it's really important to keep seeing that in the world around you, in people. Well, these other features we can see in people, their physical bodies, their shapes, their skills and lack of them in terms of intellect or physical capacities or so on. I'm really trying to see each other as part of the punya ketang, the field of merit. So we look around and we really try to acknowledge that in each other. There's clearly there are aspects we're not enlightened beings, there are aspects of our behaviour that are not fitting within that, that are not living up to that, or are confused, or not really in line yet. So we keep just picking away at that and feeling negative about that. Getting caught in all that isn't really going to help things, because it's the wrong approach, really. Because you want to actually approach the difficulties and the confusions of experience from a Dhamma perspective. So you have to get in touch with what that Dhamma perspective is about. It's not just a way of thinking, it's actually almost like your heart, your emotional basis, your views, your understanding, your qualities of compassion and clarity are all coming from that particular place, Dhamma field. And we see it manifesting in other people's behaviours, and all that quality of steadiness, diligence, mindfulness. Oh yeah, that's like that. When I experience like that, and I look at that, I drink that in, take that in, I begin to get a feeling for it. So we have to really acknowledge the skills, the punya, the merit, the word is, in other people's actions. And we say, why is that? Why is that skillful? What do I get out of that? What does I feel with that? What am I interested or soothed or steadied or inspired by that? And you bring your mind to that quality. These are human qualities, they're not that remote. When you take that in, and your mind begins to pick it up. So we're like training and transmitting not just through words, but through contemplating, the skills, the virtues, the honesty, the renunciation qualities that we see manifesting around us. In present community, past community, and as long as this lineage continues, in the future community. So what do we want to continue? If we keep looking at that, and we're in line with that, that's what's going to continue. If we keep looking at, management, business, and finances and buildings, you'll have that, but you maybe, but you won't have the spiritual heart of it. We're not here just to maintain a kind of external forms for the sake of it. We're here to maintain an internal purity of heart. And that's what you have to keep looking at, considering, reflecting upon, internally, externally. Even if you notice in yourself qualities that are not suitable, why is that the case? And where do I draw inspiration from to check that out, to look at it, and to regard it as not self? The field of Dhamma is not self. In fact, that's the whole notion of self is always like a very narrow field, and it doesn't go very far. It just goes around, and it keeps going into history and thinking, and sees itself very much as an isolated individual. When we open into the field of Dhamma, you can't really find isolated individuals. You can talk about this great monk, this great nun or somebody, but you're not talking about their physical shape. You're talking about the Dhamma that they manifested, and it's really, you see it echoed around, and you can feel it in yourself. And it's not self. It's these are kind of universal, transpersonal qualities, and these qualities are those which lead out of suffering and stress, and they also lead out of personhood. Person is always very much stuck in the world of clinging. Clinging is just it's a mechanism that occurs. It's grasping for security, for identity, for confirmation, to be this, that and the other. Clinging essentially is the formation of an isolated individual. It's a mechanism that occurs through ignorance. And something kind of like the mind contracts, holds on to, this is mine. And it's not even very good. Often what's mine I'm quite disappointed by. This isn't about glorification. It's a kind of a contraction that occurs, the confusion, the ignorance, the avijja of the citta, looking for something to find some stability in, and it starts to contract and hold on. That's its nature. This isn't something that only a few people have. Everybody has it. Like those who are still subject to ignorance, that's what will occur. There will be this contracting, searching for security in, and that contraction limits the view. It's like the mind, the citta closes. It's got a very limited view. And what does it limit the view to? Thinking, karma, history, incidents that have happened, in a kind of, just in a very superficial way. What's so superficial about it? It's all about times, dates, incidents. She did this 5 years ago, I'm like this, I was like that, I will be like that, I did this yesterday, I've been all that. And those maybe, in a way, they can be true, relatively speaking, but they're not Dhamma. They're not universal field qualities such as mindfulness, joy, rapture, compassion. These are transpersonal qualities. The personal qualities are very much stuck in the world of time, event. Now, the view contracts to that particular level of reality. Right? And this is the level of reality that's the dominant one, this particular contraction of the citta. Why is it contracted? Well, just feel it. You learn to feel the expanse or the energy of the citta when it's open and relaxed and steady and is not cramped and reactive. It's got a lovely open, bright quality to it. And the person sort of disappears or dissolves. And when it's grasping, there's a kind of clench, holding on for something to be or to get or to identify with or to get agitated around. There's a contraction. That field effect disappears, and we're in a very prisoned quality. And most people are just decorating their prisons. Decorating their prison walls with things to do, and things to sense, and things to touch and taste, and have something we can experience. So we'll have a memory of it in the future. Take a few photographs and do this, decorating the prison wall. Not even realizing it is a prison, because if you keep running around in it fast enough, you don't notice the walls. You just notice the colours, the sounds, the sights, the tastes. Oh yeah, you don't notice that till you stop. And then the colours fade, the music stops. And then my mind brings up something to get involved in. Memories, passions, worries, fears, people, events. Gets it all moving. And we get lost in that. Get involved with it. And try to fix it. Sort it out. Calm it down. Get rid of it. We're still running round the same prison. And even wanting to get out of it. Yeah. And really this is the upadana kanda, the grasping at the aggregates, the first noble truth. It's not just the truth of pain or death. These are obvious truths. This is a subtler truth. Upadana, the panchupadana kanda, the identification with perceptions, feelings, this mental formations, mental programs, psychological behaviours, emotional patterns, emotional surges that shape us and thrust us around, and all their history, identifying with that, the clinging to that, the stuck in that, the obsession with that, the fighting with that, the delighting in it, the distaste for it. This is all still pouring more and more energy into these same qualities. So it just intensifies it. And doesn't lead out of that. Because essentially, if we don't like them, we're still putting more passion and juice into that same mould. Like you run around your prison wall, scrubbing the bricks, it doesn't change it. You run around inside your prison, complaining about it, doesn't change it. You run around inside your prison, wishing you were out of it, it doesn't change it. You run around your prison saying it's not a prison, that's a palace. Okay, Stick around long enough, you'll find out. Doesn't change it. And so if there isn't anything outside it, maybe, world in general doesn't believe there's anything outside that. Except maybe when you die, you might go to heaven. Then you get out of it. Yeah. Until then, just play more golf, and so on and so on and so on. Keep decorating it. Have a party inside it, because that's all that's possible. So it's very busy and intense, and with that we feel the disappointment because this quality of entertainment or job or whatever or relationship doesn't quite last in that same happy way that it did when we began with it or we started with it. It didn't really finally get to that place of satisfaction and ease and comfort, and, that we thought it might do or might be a bit better than. And so but then we feel you've got to be in this. This is the reality. This is the world. If it's not that good, well, just get on with it anyway. There's nothing else but that. Yeah. This is the real world. Here. And in that real world we think in particular ways that are called worldly ways. What can I have? What can I make? What can I be? What am I? What will I be? What do people think of me? Why don't I get my head together? What am I going to do? Why am I so agitated? Still adding more juice to the same way of looking at things. So the Buddha got free of this. This is what awakening means. Didn't get free of pain, didn't get free of death, but got free of the suffering of the aggregates, to the point to which, from that freedom's a recognition, it's just the body dying, it's just feelings passing, just perceptions changing. Did realize something outside the prison. It wasn't continue running around, trying to be something, become something. Stimulated by something, or fixing something, or lamenting something. Just recognizing from outside that the statement is always, there is suffering, there is stress, there is, there is. Doesn't in any way validate that person position. Doesn't mean nothing's happening, but it's always, the language is quite clear. It's always, there is, there is, there is. Well, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is not present in this being. Doesn't mean you've got no mindfulness, you should get more mindful. It just as though the enlightenment factor is not present. There are conditions and causes that would bring that around. This is the way of explaining Dhamma, isn't it? Where are those causes and conditions? They're in the field. You want to look in the field and say, well, what is mindfulness based upon? Mindfulness is based upon meeting good people. Mindfulness is based upon cultivating right view. Mindfulness is based upon understanding morality, restraint. These are supports and foundations for mindfulness. If they're present, there will be mindfulness. If they're not present, there won't. At least right mindfulness, the ability to bear something in mind. That's not about me, building up that picture. To bear qualities in mind, to bear Dhamma in mind. You bear that in mind, that's what comes to mind. And it leads out. because it doesn't fit into the prison in the first place. There's no self in terms of joy. There's no self in terms of compassion. It's not like this is mine. And there's even a lot of talk is made these days about mindfulness and the benefits of it. Dealing with depression and so forth and so forth. And you get to be a mindfulness. You can go on a mindfulness course, a 6-week course, and you can be a mindfulness teacher. You can get accredited. Now, I'm not an accredited mindfulness teacher. I've never been on a course. I haven't got any credit, so I don't really know if I can speak with authority on it. But I've been fumbling away in my own little sweet way for 45 years about something that I thought was mindfulness. But I didn't get to the course. And I certainly made quite a few mistakes. It's even thinking I knew what it was. Mindfulness was basically being able to focus on a particular sensation, say breathing in and out, hold that. Mindfulness is about walking up and down, being able to focus on the sensations in my feet, and if I did it well enough and good enough, long enough, eventually my mind would kind of calm down. And it was about that particular kind of focus, and generally the encouragement was if you can make the focus more and more firm and more precise, then that will be conducive to release. Some kind of, you'll see something. You'll see, if you get it really down, very, very sharp and fine, you can see these micro moments in between sensations. Plop, plop, plop. So it was always very much a kind of a process of concentrating effort to focus on particular points, and often sensation points. And the effect essentially was of a compressing of awareness into a particular shape. And that compression was never questioned, certainly never criticized. That was never kind of acknowledged. It was called, maybe one-pointedness, concentration on what you're doing seemed to be right. But over time, certainly in my own case, it's really pretty intense. And kind of also quite narrow. So one could be quite mindful, doing things, but actually pretty oblivious to what was going on around. And that was also considered good. You just kind of don't notice what's going on around you, just focus on that one point. And put more effort into it. And there's also something called the present moment. Focus on the present moment. Mindfulness in the present moment. And this language you pick up, and you kind of, okay, what's the present moment? How long is it? Is it 1 second, half a second, a nanosecond? When does the present moment begin and end? If there's such a thing as a present moment, you must have, that was the past moment, this is the present moment, and it stops. But there's no present moment, is there? As soon as you say something like a moment, you slice, right? You're going to create, and the slice gets thinner and thinner. The more focus you get, the thinner and thinner that present moment gets. So the whole process is very much one of the language and the attitudes of narrowing everything down to, with a kind of intense, almost brooding intensity of effort to do that. And that was sort of considered good. So what I found for myself was I could do it. I did that for pretty much very solidly for about about 3 years or so, with nothing else to do. And then I remember reading this word of peace. I thought, oh, peace, I never heard, because that was never an experience, peace. I remember sort of reading something about peace of mind. I thought, oh, peace of mind. Oh, yeah. No, because that was not an experience I'd had. And it had even gone off the list of things you were trying to experience. You're trying to experience mindfulness in the present moment, the arising and ceasing of sensations. And then you think like peace of mind, no. Contentment, no. Happiness, nope. Joy, nope. Kindness, nope. Kindness is a separate practice. You can either be mindful, or you could do metta. They're separate practices. Yeah. I think maybe an hour of mindfulness and an hour of metta, or whatever you want to do it. So you try and mix them up. You kind of. But then it's always there's somebody doing it, isn't it? There's somebody doing this mindfulness stuff. There's somebody looking, there's somebody focusing, there's somebody getting more intense. There's a release from that. You change you change the details, but essentially the same pattern. It's a person, a self, person is being mindful. And they try to be mindful for an hour or so. And in that particular view, that particular perspective, the energies of the mind are extremely compressed. And over time, as I've listened to others, I found this particular practice can be quite destructive. Headaches, psychologically malfunctioning. People are just so obsessed with themselves, and often negatively so, critical. Only trapped inside their prison. Sometimes people are having all kinds of disturbing energies running over their bodies, like something twitching, or feeling weird energies running up and down their bodies. Headaches, electric shocks, because they're being so mindful. I remember talking to someone who was doing mindfulness of breathing. She got to the point where she couldn't hardly breathe anymore because she was so mindful of it. In the present moment, of course. That there wasn't room for the breath to happen because the present moment was only a nanosecond. And so the mind had contracted and gripped so tight that it was actually affecting her breathing. And with that cramped state, breathing is a process that happens in the system, and when the breathing is trapped, and a lot of anxiety comes up, because that's what happens. The vagus nerve that operates the breathing also operates insecurity, anxiety. So she's very anxious. The more anxious she got, the harder she tried to be mindful, to quell it. The harder she tried to be mindful, the more compressed it got. The more compressed it got, the more narrow breathing got. The more narrow breathing got, the more anxious she got. And then thinking, I'm not being mindful enough. Is the result. Mindfulness. You're not being mindful enough. So you do more of it. And she was about to go on another retreat to do the same thing, to get even more intense. And then something in her said, no. What? Where did that come from? Somebody said, no, don't do that. It's kind of inner, some voice or something. And she said, you need to take a break. And she ended up she went to Amaravati, I think, and she said, I didn't have to be mindful of my breathing anymore. I could just walk around the field and breathe in and out and enjoy it. It's such a relief not to have to be mindful. So this word, one can use it in different ways. I'm not saying that mindfulness is not a good quality, but just, when it's operated by the person, all the person's attitudes are intensified by it. All the person's issues are intensified by it. Because instead of bearing the Dhamma in mind, we're actually bearing the person in mind. We're not necessarily thinking about ourselves, we're coming from that position of I am, I have to be, I'm not, I should be more. We're always coming from that position. So that's what we're bearing in mind, the background, the person who is or isn't mindful. We're bearing in mind the cramp. We're actually coming from the cramped position. And everything we hold within that cramped position is affected by the cramping. And of course, the most significant thing that's affected by the cramping is the citta itself, the heart itself. So that becomes essentially void of emotional richness, ease, contentment, joy, humour, because it's too compressed. Yeah. And of course the breathing affects the breathing. Breathing becomes quite tight. And then of course the encouragement is be mindful of breathing. So, but mindfulness of the object, but you've got to you've got to recognise what's the subject of the mindfulness. Because that is not insignificant. And you can say, well, of course, who else is going to be mindful but me? I've got to do it. The Buddha says, practice for yourself, be reliable to yourself, be a refuge to yourself, get on with it. Of course, absolutely. I'm saying there's a difference between authenticity, personal authenticity, which is reviewing values and virtues that are dear, that you're inspired by, that are rich and meaningful for you. Yes, that's your window on the Dhamma field, and you want to drink those in. Yeah? So then you're saying, this is why it's very useful to bear in mind, although the Buddha talks about anatta, not self, he also, time and time again, talks about citta, heart, awareness. There's something, you could say, however the language is, that does this practice. Yeah? And it's that which can open, it's aware, it's sensitive to virtue, to to the welfare of others. That's a function of it. It has a virtue. It's relational. Yeah. It's sensitive to the welfare of others. It's sensitive to stress and non-stress. It's sensitive to ethics. These are the very obvious features of that. And of course, there's a lot more to it, but we come into that. What is that quality? Now, this is not just a rule-bearing thing, like you don't do this, you don't do that, you're like this, he's like that. But no, it's not a law system. It's a sense of sensitivity, conscious and concern for the welfare of oneself and others, that there be relational harmony. Let there be no abuse in this. Let there be no negativity in this. It's, in fact, it's a quality of loving kindness and morality are really two sides of the same thing. It's relational fluency, freedom from obstruction. When you cultivate that reliably, then you begin to we always bear this in mind as a foundation, because then your mindfulness is coming from that particular, is based upon that. As the Buddha says, when you cultivate morality, you get your view straight. When your view is straight, then you should be mindful. And this is the view. You've got to get the view first. Cause and effect, good and evil, sensitivity and concern. The value of skillful, virtuous actions. They're not just behavior, they're not just getting things right. There's a purity and a beauty and a loving, bright energy that comes with punya, skillfulness. And there's dark, confused, tangled, negative energies that arise with harmfulness. We sense that, and you tune to that. Then you set the view straight, and then one is mindful. Based upon that, one observes, one bears presence with what occurs. So it can actually be doesn't have to be a narrow focus at all. The Buddha never mentioned narrow focuses, he never mentioned present moment. Slicing things into infinitesimal moments, he never said that. He never said focus on sensations, he never said that. So when we say something like mindfulness of breathing, now the average person, the person view, very much experiences this body as this particular shape I see in front of me. And I know that air comes up the nose and down in the lungs and out again. That's breathing. That's what we see. Breathing as an anatomical experience, and the sensations involved with it. So you can kind of focus on those sensations, and they occur maybe the tip of your nose. Well, this is not that difficult to explain. Why didn't the Buddha say it if it's not that difficult to explain? Why did he not say that? The great teacher of gods and humans, why didn't he say such a simple thing as that? He didn't say it. Because it's not necessary, it's, in my opinion, it's even damaging. What did he say? He said, just notice. If you just sit comfortable, get steady, when your view is straight, contemplate what is breathing. How does that experience happen? There's a breathing in and a breathing out. A breathing in, breathing out. It's not a sensation, is it? It's an energy. Right? Change of energy. Breathing in is, and breathing out. When it's any body's going to experience that. That's how we know what they are. If you're breathing out, you know it's a release energy. Completely different from breathing in. It's obvious. Breathing in is an energy. It's not confined to your nose. If it's confined to your nose, the rest of your body wouldn't receive any energy. But the whole body receives it. That's the purpose of breathing. So that the energy you breathe in, the energy satisfies and nourishes the entire body. That's the purpose of breathing. Right? We're not just going to get our lungs and nose happy, the whole body's going to benefit from it, and the whole body feels it. If you're not compressed and contracted, so why does he say sit up straight, lengthen your spine, feel comfortable, take up a sitting position, stable, upright, so that your body's not agitated, stressed, compressed, contracted. Then what happens? Feel that breathing in is an energy rushing through, breathing out, different quality to it. And you just stay with that. You're picking up an energy. And when you pick up an energy, your mind is in a different focus. And I must admit, if you're used to focusing on sensations and data, this can be confusing. Like, because your mind is so used to picking up words and ideas and little bits and pieces and sensations and mental thoughts and so forth. That's that. It gets into this habit, so the mind's focus is used to doing that. You can't do that with energies. You have to do it like runs across the palm. That. It's not a little point. It's not it's not that same discrete object. It's a flow. Yeah? And that itself, if you can tune into it, is extremely helpful because you begin to relax that contracted, grasping mind. Yeah? You're not trying to eradicate your ego. You're just actually focusing on energies. And energies don't have that same narrow, contracted, breathing doesn't. So he says fully breathing in, long, short, fully breathing, experiencing, sensitive to the entire body. Sensitive to the entire body. That's not a point, is it? That's... And you sense that, what is this body? It's no longer the thing we see with our eyes. It's not defined by size or shape or gender. It's like a natural form that you experience it. It's not a person. It's, you could say, a field of sensations and energies with this tidal effect of breathing flowing through them. Now you can say that's me and my body, but if you don't bother with that saying of it, you don't have to. You don't need to have an identity to breathe in and out. So you just keep skimming off what you don't need and just be with what's actually happening. Who's breathing? Not a relevant concept. Not necessary. It's doing it fine. You don't need it to have that concept. Because breathing is involuntary, it happens by itself. It doesn't need to be somebody doing it. And so there's that kind of pragmatic, not ideological attack on self, it's just a pragmatic relinquishment of what's not necessary. And also, the citta requires a much more stable, uncontracted, unfabricated focus. It's not a focus that's driven by the will, obligation, it's just being receptive and discarding what isn't relevant now. The more that we can attune to that focus, you realize also certain emotional qualities are natural to that focus. Qualities of warm-heartedness are natural to that focus. The citta, as it's uncontracted, comes out of intense agitation, anxiety, striving, willfulness, got to make it happen, all that stuff, into something that's more expansive. Its nature is to feel happy, benevolent, loving, you could say, in a sympathetic way. It's not romance, it's not passion, it's just the warm-hearted quality. That's the natural expression of citta when it's no longer contracted. And these are extremely helpful energies to have moving. They're not just emotions. Well, I don't know what you mean by an emotion, but they're actually, they're not abstract. They're not abstract. In other words, they're not just kind of like something we can think about. They saturate this emotional field. So, just as we have the, you can say the field of the body, so as you're breathing in and out, what's breathing? The body is breathing. And what is that body? It no longer has an identity, it's not a person, it's just the body breathing. You can even begin to dismantle things like ribs, well, you don't need those. You don't need to remember those. Liver, doesn't need that. Hair, not necessary. And gradually, you begin to clean out your little map of what you imagine a body is. What you don't need, put it aside. So all these ideas about your knees or your back or your head, or even that idea of living in that thing, you don't need it. Why keep creating it? If you need it, by all means, but you don't need it for that. You might need to have some sense of back, posture, but really after a while you begin to sense not so much spine and bones and shoulders so much as upright, steady, open. That's what you need. That's what you need. Breathing happens within that. Feeling good. Feeling good. Discard what you don't need. Then you have what we call a field of the body. What I mean by a field is it has a certain expanse to it, and there's qualities that run across that, energies that move through that. And with the breathing centering, the field gets pleasant because it's rather like a pond with this steady rhythm moving through it. The ripples are rather agreeable. So the body's more like a pond, like a energy. What is it? An energy form. So that's the field of the body, bodily field. And you also have like an emotional field, which means the sense of the expanse of one's heart's sensitivity. Emotion is essentially the sensitivity of the heart, how it's affected, how it responds. Right? That's what an emotion is, a sense of we're affected, heart is touched by something, and there's some quality of response. And that response is not a sensation, it's not a physical thing, it occurs in this particular realm that we call the emotional realm. And it's as solid and real as flesh and bones. We have a thought realm, we can live within that, and that can seem very solid and real, and we live within that body. We also live within an anatomical body. We also can dwell in a bodily field, an energy body, and we have an emotional body. Right? And that emotional body, it's real, isn't it? You wake up in the morning and it's feeling depressed. You're in that. You kind of clear up, you're feeling a little bit brighter, it brightens. Then you get excited, you get stimulated. Then you feel conflicted, it gets shivers with some irritation. That's happening, isn't it? And we say, oh, it's me. You don't need to say that. More accurately, there is that. And as that particular domain, if you like, emotional domain, is affected, it gets stirred and stressed and joyful and happy and calm or whatever. Yeah? And but when it's overseen by the person, who has only a certain limitation on what they're allowed to experience as emotions, and is searching to have positive emotions, happy feelings, and doesn't want unpleasant feelings. So when there's that pressure on it, the emotional field gets distorted into the person with all their personal irritation points and flash points and depressions. And, you get a very compressed emotional body. It gets intense in there. Like everything else, then the person searches for things to drop into that emotional body that make you feel happy. Generally, it means stimulation of some kind or another. That's what the person knows how to do. to get their emotional body feeling happy. They throw some goodies into it. Not necessarily evil, but that's what we're distracting, we would say, from a purely Dhammic point of view. Because instead of innately opening and clarifying the emotional body, we just keep dropping more stuff into it to change it. It's cosmetics. But we're not addressing health of the emotional body, we're addressing cosmetics of the emotional body. And cosmetics are not healthy. Right? Now, qualities that are healthy for the emotional body are qualities of generosity, goodwill, kindness towards oneself, towards others, towards all beings. So your field of loving kindness, Dhamma fields, are essentially have healthy emotional energies in them. Yeah? And instead of adding things, we begin to remove the quality of ill will, to remove the quality of self-obsession. Be generous. Remove the self-obsession. Look around. See others as yourself. Have concern for the welfare of others because you see them in sympathy. So you're removing these occlusions, these blocks of the heart. When you remove the block of self-concern, of self-obsession, self-hatred, self-criticism, you remove those blocks, the energy of the emotional energy begins to open out. And if you tune it into breathing, then the breathing acts as something, an energy then that begins to soothe, mollify and steady the emotional body. Because breathing is an emotional, is associated with emotion. Yeah? We talk inspire, despair. Those are breath terms. Yeah? So the breath body and the emotional body really work together. And so this is clearly laid out by the Buddha. Calming the field of the body, kaya sankara, the energy fields of the body. Experiencing rapture. There's the beginning of it. As the bodily field calms, a sense of rapture occurs, refreshment, emotional uplift, ease, sukha. Yeah? These start to come up because not through popping anything in there, but just by opening and steadying the bodily field. Now, if you contemplate this breath in terms of energy, and you know how to work with energy, this is what's going to happen. But you can't work with energy as if it's a thought. You can't tell it what to do. It's not a sensation that's going to come and go in a micro moment. It's a flow that has to be like, use a word like energy, because that gives you a good idea of what you're handling. It's like a stream, or electricity, or a light. You kind of hold it carefully, and you let it process through, and you steady it and soothe it, right? And that's that. You don't chop it into bits and analyze it, right? You handle it. And so using the citta then becomes much more like a hands that hold things rather than eyes that see things and slice things into bits and this is this and that. Now, check it out for yourself. You won't see any instruction to do this slicing job on breathing. You won't see it. You will see satisfying the mind, gladdening the mind. You'll see that. You'll see things such as when the body's relaxed, the mind is happy. In other words, when the bodily field is steadied, the emotional field is happy. And he says when that Chitta is happy, it is concentrated. Another big word that comes up, and so potent that many people don't even want to talk about it. Because I can't concentrate. My concentration isn't very good, I can't concentrate. How much concentration do I have to have before I get into first jhana? And it's always this sense of doing exactly what the person does, get narrow and contracted onto an object. And that's the person's process. That's what the person does. That's what the person's built upon, that particular energy and contraction of citta. So you throw a word like concentration into that and you realize, oh, this is going to be big business, because that contraction is now going to be sanctified as a valid process. Get concentrated, get tight and narrow. Check it out. Not there in the suttas. Not there. The Buddha never says concentrate on anything. He doesn't say concentrate on breathing. He doesn't say concentrate on a sensation. He doesn't say concentrate on anything. He says the citta is samadhied. It's happy, it's contented, it settles. It settles into itself, therefore it is samadhied. That's what it means, the collected, stable, steady citta. And its precedents are happiness and ease. Not willpower and focusing on one point. Mindfulness has then done its job, or it's continued to do its job, of holding dhammas, holding the fields, clearing away what's not necessary, staying with that, and naturally, because of that, the citta begins to settle down and feel steady and comfortable and dwell in the ease of that. This is right? Just check it out. Check it out in yourself. Check it out in the scriptures. And what are the results of that? Instead of the mind being made narrow, holding on to right and wrong, holding on to details, holding on to better and worse, holding on to comparison and contrast, holding on to future and past, holding to identities. It's freed from that grip. It doesn't like that grip. Instead, it settles into Dhamma. The only place it can settle. The only place it can settle. Check it out. You try and settle into it being a person, you're thinking about what you're going to be. You're thinking about what you should be. You're thinking about what you were. You're thinking about what other people think of you. Right? How settled is that? How reliable is that? How comfortable is that? Can't settle in that. You've got to keep propping it up, defending it, furnishing it, sustaining it. How settled is that? How comfortable is that? Well, is it necessary? It's necessary. It's your life. It's your life. Do you want to take a chance that it might not be necessary? That just beginning with things that you can access very directly, breathing in, breathing out, Not subscribing to any philosophy, ideology, not saying I'm doing this the rest of my life, not saying I'm going to be a monk for the rest of my life, no, not saying I believe in Buddhism, no, just saying I'm going to breathe in and breathe out, yeah, and see what happens as the anxiety drops and the need to be drops and the willpower begins to relax and let go. See what the world looks like then. You think, I don't need that. Doesn't matter. This isn't necessary. That's not going anywhere. This is where I belong. In this. It's your life. It's not a life of what you should be and ought to be and what everybody else is doing. It's your life. What are you going to do with it? The same crazy stuff that most people are doing, running around, fighting and worrying and anxious and trying to make a living and and stressed out. You want to do that with it? Look around, plenty of models of that. Check them out. What do you want to do with your life? Well, maybe that's too big a question, but just breathing out happens naturally in a way your life is not something you do. It's something you are. It's something you are. It's not something you've got to decide how it's going to be. It's something you are. And it's precious. It's all you have. Clean it. Look after it. Be generous with it. Trust it. Listen to it. Care for it. Very directly, in the vitality of your own body, in the movements of your own heart. Steady that, calm that. That's something you can trust. The rest, you'll see. You'll see. Don't add what you don't need, and you'll see what's necessary, what's past, what's the way out of suffering. This is why the Buddha taught this. This is a Buddhist approach. This is for our welfare. This is for our way out of suffering and stress. It's a reality that works for that purpose. It's your life. So I'll offer this for your consideration, and hopefully perhaps some few points that you might like to pick up on, or points you want to look at, or things you want to drop. And now we have the vigil, continue our meditation practice here at Cittaviveka, and people who are listening online, if you have some time, just continue. Don't think too much about tomorrow. Think about your life now. What's bright, what's beautiful to do. This is the right way to see it.
Namayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karo